Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. I'm delighted to start on Beyond Order. Now, we here at 52 Living Ideas have focused a lot on Jordan Peterson. We've gone through his book, 12 Rules for Order, twice. We've gone through Maps of Meaning twice. This one, we're doing it for the first time because the book has just come out. All right, so we're going to actually do a deep dive into it. We have an incredible community of people who are familiar with Jordan Peterson, and we're going to go through this book and see how much value that can be extracted from this book. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. This is a tremendously interactive format. We got about 43 people here, so we get each of these meetups will get between 50 to 100 people. Okay, so it's a large number of people. And we're going to make it interactive. The way we are going to do it is that we have facilitators. So we're going to start by giving everybody a chance to talk for 2 minutes on what they got from a particular chapter. The chapter we're talking about today is the Overture. You can talk about, you're not trying to summarize everything. You're just going to talk about what's the most profound thing that you learned from that for about 2 minutes. You get to hear such takes from everybody, after which we are going to go into breakout rooms. It's going to be about 6-7 people in the, between 5 to 7 people in the breakout rooms. Those are going to be moderated by facilitators. And there we are going to ask 3 questions, okay? And after the breakout rooms will run for about 30 minutes, after which we come back and we talk about our takeaways. And then after we hear all the takeaways, we'll identify some themes, maybe between 1 to 3 themes, and then we'll do lightning rounds on that. All right, so that's the format. So we're going to start by people talking about what they got from this first chapter, the Overture. So anybody who wants to speak, we got 4 rules for this meetup. Rule number 1, I know there are lots of new people today. So rule number 1 is type exclamation mark in chat or raise your hand in Zoom in order to speak. Rule number 2, keep on topic. Rule number 3, be brief. And rule number 4, speak your mind. Feel free to disagree with anybody on anything and do so courteously. Okay, courteously, that's important. All right, so who would like to go first? What did you get from reading the Overture? So we're going to start with Judith. Folks, just line up by typing in exclamation mark. Judith, go ahead.
What I got from this Overture was just really sent home the importance of stories and narrative, because I was thinking about his story and his experience with his family, each individual in his family, and just what it all meant for his chaos. So it got me thinking that, like, because we live in this linear sense of time with a past and then one moment present and then the rest is future. So it's all past and future really, except when we're acting. That really everything in our lives is a story. If we have a story that's fixed, it's open to interpretation, what our past was, but it's a fixed story already. And then we have a story that we're creating constantly in our minds about our future with really limitless possibilities, not any possibility, but just limitless numbers of plots and expressions that future could be. But it never includes chaos. We never plan or dream about chaos in our stories, and yet it's always there. So I just thought, that it's like that moment, the times that we're struggling with chaos and we're wrestling with that dragon, like Jordan Peterson did with his health, and each of his family members had their health issues. in a way, those are the moments that define, that they're what give us meaning, is how we respond in those moments that we can't control, that gives our lives meaning when we look back. It's about that. That's pretty much what I took from it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Judith. Next up is going to be David, followed by Joe. David.
Yeah, I think that the main sort of word that comes across is courage. I mean, just the challenges that he faced and is describing in this the setup for the book, and just, you know, willing with his family, with other I mean, doctors, everybody else to you know, accept this burden, accept this problem that he experienced, and overcome it. And I mean, he sort of alluded to it in this overture, and I've heard him say the same in other interviews, that, you know, the first book was about setting up order, about how to create some sort of a structure in one's life, and how to in this, you know, this sort of duality of you know, chaos and order. So first you wanted order, and now he's saying, you know, once you have that stability, that base, the second book, he's, I mean, again, I've heard in interviews, it was about how to I don't know what how does, not recoil, but how to bounce back, or how to leverage too much order. I mean, what's the way to be a little bit more exploratory? What are the rules to be able to again, use the courage to find the challenges out there in life, and to explore that other aspect. I mean, in some ways he was looking at people who were too much chaos in their life, and now he's saying maybe people who have too much order in their life. What do they need to do to look to improve their life?
Wonderful. Thank you, David. So folks, just go ahead and line up to talk about your, you know, what you got from reading the overture. You can talk about what you expect from the book as a whole, because this overture is an introduction to the book. Next up is going to be Joe.
I mean, actually, I think it was, I think David just captured the main theme for me, as well as the idea of courage. And then how do you like maintain this balance between order and chaos? And then that's what it is it's a balance. But other than courage, the other thing that really stuck out to me is how you, in order to how to deal with the unexpected and stay open to other opportunities, is that you can't be resentful of the situation that you're in. And I think that was an overriding theme in both Maps of Meaning, 12 Rules for Life, and for this as well. And I think, again, the idea that order is insufficient as far as a way of living, because it will ultimately, you know, it in some way, shape, or form, we're going to engage with chaos. So that, you know, that if you just don't necessarily challenge your conventional wisdom, then you're absolutely going to run into problems at some point, and how to then balance that. So again, I think that the key, though, is at any point in time, he could have been resentful for the situation that he was in. And if he had been, he wouldn't have been able to will himself through it. And I think that that's, to me, and that speaks to David's point of courage. And, you know, so, and the idea of being truthful with ourselves in that process is also critical, because it ensures a certain level of awareness so that we're able to actually navigate uncharted, unknown territory.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Next up is going to be Maritza, followed by Jade. Maritza.
Now, I agree that a lot of this overture does deal with the concept of courage, but you know what I got kind of most out of it, and hearing Peterson tell us about his, you know, very hard story, and how I went through is what strikes me is the idea of, yes, he got through it and, he needed the courage to do that, but he couldn't have done it alone. He tells us that we have sources of strength that we can draw upon, and they might not work so great, but they might be enough to get us through. Whereas on our own, by ourselves, we may not make it. And so, he's telling us to kind of look up, look around, see if there's something that kind of sort of resembles a life, raft, and grab on and see if maybe that'll help you. And maybe that one is not enough, but you can find something else to tie together there and keep going. And that's kind of what I get from this overture, that he's saying, he's putting out and making himself very, very vulnerable in the hopes of revealing to us the necessity of community. He even states, he uses the word love, which is interesting to me because really in his giant tome, Maps of Meaning, in the 12 Rules for Life, I actually don't think he uses the word love, which I find to be fascinating. Yeah. But in these small little 20 pages, I think it's 20, he uses the word love. And in one sentence, he says it like 3 times. And to me, that was just striking, that he says, yes, you need courage. Don't lie to yourself. You have to admit that you've made these mistakes. And most importantly, you need to look and see what support system you have and use it, because sometimes the chaos is going to be so encroaching on you that even using the support system you see may make you come very close to failure. So that's what I got out of that, and I thought that was fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you, Maritza. Next up is Jade, Jyoti, Jonathan, and Marvin. Jade.
I think it's a little soon for me to have any real conclusions. But I would say at first glance of all of this, I hear that on some level, order is being framed as an objective. So all these things that you do are a means to this end. And I think it's interesting. I feel like the subjectivity of chaos versus order is also worth paying attention to, because I think it would be different for everyone what they would define as that. And I think it's also interesting the level of futility that he outlines, and yet we're still trying to seek order. It's like even the fact that he tried medication, then he tried another medication or retried the same medication. I don't remember what he did, but it still didn't work. It actually made things worse. So it's kind of like, how much do you control? And when you realize you don't have control, what do you do? And I don't think he really gave us an answer. I think he fell back on value systems, is kind of what happened, is you focus on what you decide is important, and you leverage what you can, but don't give up. I also thought it was interesting how Joe was saying that resentment wouldn't get you through. But for a lot of people, anger, resentment is a catalyst for change. There are a lot of people who will sit with whatever it is until they're angry. And then when they're angry, that's when they're sparked to do something. That's when the fire gets lit behind their eyes and you see their whole reality change because they're fed up and they're not live like that anymore. I also think this is interesting because on some level, all humans, no matter how passive seeming, have a desire to control. Because even those of us who, like in one of the other ones, we're talking about wanting to be liked, and that seems as passive and compliant, but it's also a strategy for control, because if people like you, they take care of you. They take care of you, you have a support system. So, again, it's too soon. I haven't really had time to organize all of this stuff, but I think it's important for all of us to figure out how much chaos are you comfortable with? How comfortable are you being uncomfortable? Because I think that's the root of what he's talking about. He was not comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think people always say fortune favors the bold, but it favors the patient, the resilient. Because even if you're angry, whether you're optimistic, whatever it is that gets you to that next step, you have to have those other traits. So I think like also the interesting thing is temperament. How does your temperament fit in there? Like there're just so many different aspects that I feel like I would have to really consider in order to actually understand this thing. But I don't know, because even just the concept of reframing reality, which is in a sense what this book is also doing, it's a reframe of his previous book coming to the same topic from a different angle. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jade. Next up is Jyoti, Jonathan, and Marvin. Folks, if you would like to share what you learned from the overture or any comments about the book, you can go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Jyoti.
Okay, so these pages that I read from the overture, they speak directly to me. There are a lot of parallels in the teachings that I have learned from my crisis. So I'm needless to say, I'm very, very impressed with what he has written about chaos and order and bouncing back and what have you. I think what I got from it is that it's easy to take order because it's predictable, it is smooth, it's stable. But when one is in the state of order, one has to be prepared for chaos. One has to have, like I used to say, plan A and B in place. So the order fizzles out, then you have to go in the chaos and you are prepared for it. And to be prepared for it, I think the very important point that Peterson made was encouragement, love, and what else did he say? That you have to have your family. You are not alone. Your family, it works as a team. If you don't have your family, there is nothing to look forward to, and the family doesn't have anything to look forward to. And you have to chalk out those plans beforehand, not when you are in or when you are in chaos. And it helps to understand these rules, because he talks about the internal resources that you have strength and you have your character from which you can draw upon from time to time. And also, I already talked about the family, because you just about what was going to happen, you don't know. Even God himself does not know what the worst might be, but we must, in our ignorance, prepare for all eventualities. So I'm very looking forward to this, going through this book with the group, because the first group, the first 12 rules, I had a little willy-nilly kind of an attitude because I joined so late. But now I'm just going to learn with everybody else and keep giving my ideas from time to time. This is what I got from the overture. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. Next up is Jonathan, Marvin, and Brian. Jonathan.
Yeah, so I thought this was an interesting introduction. And I think particularly that because sort of it probably wasn't the introduction he was intending to write when he first decided to write this book. And sort of he had to like, it's kind of ironic that he's starting this book, which is sort of beyond order, dealing with basically being thrust into chaos and having to relate it. So I see this introduction as sort of like a his sort of Jonah and the whale story, and he sort of goes through this. And a few things that I sort of took away from it was he sort of goes to these themes that sort of carry him through that I think some other people have touched on. One of which is, lack of, like, not being resentful, which I chalk up to humility, right? Another is meaning, and a third is relationships. And so he sort of says he kind of just touches on these things very briefly. But I guess the thing that was interesting to me, and I'm curious to see play out in the book, is just the title Beyond Order. And he talks about it a little bit because there's sort of a temporal meaning to that. You know, like we kind of sort of think of, so typically when we talk about order and chaos, we think about yin and yang, but this is beyond order. This is, he's sort of talking about when you've gotten things into order, then what, right? You know, you can get stultified, right? You know, think about like whenever you've achieved something that you've been trying really hard and then you don't know what to do with yourself. So I thought that was a really interesting take on it, and I'm really curious to see how he, you know, teases that out in the book. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. Next up is going to be Marvin, Brian, Andrew, Victor, Claire, Ron, and Luke. Marvin.
Yes, hello. We'll try very hard to be brief. I just heard somebody mention about the word love in the first few pages of this book, that he has not used that word in his previous book. And from a very first few pages in this book, he come back to it. That's one of the reasons that I am not a big fan of Jordan, because I read his first book and it feels very intellectual. And I think that's what he's suffering. Something like Nietzsche's Kill Himself. Somebody mentioned about that. And I think Jordan suffered from the same sort of pain that he tried to comprehend something that intellectually, that is the intellect is incapable of comprehend, because the mind is an instrument that was designed to understand the physical world. That's why we build rocket, we go to the moon, we have internet, we have everything. However, in terms of relationship, like psychotherapy has not contributed anything rather than just theory. Right?
Marvin, we're talking about, what we'll do is that I'll let you talk about this during your takeaways, because right now we're talking about what did you get from the overture.
Okay.
Okay, so you can talk about it in your takeaway. Next up is going to be Brian, Andrew, and Victor. Brian.
Okay, I must admit I spent a lot of my time looking at various things on YouTube. There are about 3 very long sessions where he talks about what's happened to him and the book, and there's one where he actually summarizes the whole contents of the book, which is very good. When I moved to the book and started to read this chapter, obviously I'd already heard it all from YouTube, so I didn't really get much from it. I have to say that I find the personal treatment, going into the depths of the personal and the very serious and difficult problems he's had, I don't find a place for it in the book. So I read it again and back. I went through the chapter, but I got most of my information from YouTube. There are some very, very, in fact, it's about 6 hours worth of stuff, which is on YouTube, that I went through. Maybe I shouldn't have done, but there you go. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Next up is Andrew, Victor, and Claire. Andrew.
Sure. Thanks. Briefly, 3 things, main themes. 1, he couldn't have done this without his family and loved ones. He makes it very clear and emphasizes that heavily. 2, it occurred to me that his state, he had a chaos was brewing. I think that's distinct here. It's not like chaos, we think about chaos kind of coming out of the blue. The chaos was brewing because he was on these medications for years. So that's kind of a little subtlety that I think is interesting. You have to, it's not just like get ready that something might pop out, but you might have got some stuff that's already kind of like, brewing underneath. The third thing is, and this is based on reading it, listening to him, and also watching him. This is a good example that you could go through hell and you can survive and have all of the support system, but guess what? The effects could be long lasting, and you're not necessarily going to return, in the same way that you kind of went into it. And it appears to me that he's got some long lasting, negative impact. So those are the three things.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Next up is going to be Victor, Claire, and Ron. Victor.
Well, thanks, Shrikant. So one thing I picked up as a theme out of all these 12 rules is a theme of giving ourselves a permission to go forth. And the second thing is how to focus and stay on the thing that we are trying to do, which is a very good thing. And the second thing in terms of theme is the ideas, in a way, they're not completely new. They are not completely out of the box. We have been hearing this, we have been reading these ideas over time. And one thing that makes it special is to bring in the idea of why to actually have these principles in our lives, and so that kind of why makes it more relatable. So that's the second thing I picked up. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Victor. Next up is going to be Claire, Ron, and Luke. Claire.
So Peterson ends the last book, Pet a Cat When You Encounter One on the Street, with most of the book is around kind of Michaela's struggles, his daughter's struggles with her own health issues. And he ends the chapter saying, things are good for now. And I think what is so moving to me, even as I was reflecting on like receiving this book in the mail, was that story arc, right? And watching him even consciously know that this was a time of order and of peace and of tranquility, but that there was something lurking in the kind of darkness. And I think what that reflects, and when you read the beginnings of kind of the torture that him and his family has been through, it definitely reflects as Jonathan was saying, like a Jonah and the whale, a Christ-like archetype, which I'm sure he observes, although wouldn't be so bold as to proclaim here. But that's, to me, pretty undeniable, and just sort of odd that his life models his writing in such a way. And I think it also makes me weary, or makes me conscious of like, this story is almost addictive, like an archetype, like an ideology. And that's something to kind of watch. And so I was curious in reading this beginning chapter of like, okay, what is he gonna get out of that time? We kind of knew from the internet that he was struggling. So like, what are the takeaways that he's gonna come out of it? And what I think you see in this section is a couple of things. One of the only thing he really proclaims is like, this helped me with my work, right? And that my work both distracted me and it kept me alive. And I think this helped validate the truth of these ideas. And I think that's interesting. And then there's this element, which all of you guys have touched on, of like love and family and the importance of that. And that definitely makes me think of Nietzsche and his ideas of just love and work, right? Of like, you need the family, you need that side, and then you need to have that mental stimulation. And then I think my kind of hypothesis is, and just in the word choice that he uses, because there's just kind of these 2 pages that just dominate, I think, the section, but there's a lot of word choice around courage, as you guys have said, and a lot of like nobility, and this sort of heroic journey, and that creates the meaning, that creates the order between balance and chaos. I'm just going to read a small section just for those of you guys who haven't received it yet. When you're visited by chaos and swallowed up, when nature curses you or someone you love with illness, or when tyranny rends asunder something of value that you have built, it is salutary to know the rest of the story. All of that misfortune is only the bitter half of the tale of existence, without taking note of the heroic elements of redemption or the nobility of the human spirit requiring a certain responsibility to shoulder. We ignore that addition to the story at our own peril because life is so difficult that losing sight of the heroic part of existence could cause us everything. We don't want that to happen. We need instead to take heart, to take spirit, and to look at things carefully and properly and to live the way that we could. So I think that these kind of more noble, courageous themes definitely showed through for me a lot. Finally, he ends with kind of the same, he just parallels the last book when he says order is, and he does say chaos is. And I think, you know, he has a pretty succinct definition of chaos, and it's all about things that hide in the dark and surprise. And that element of surprise, like all the words he uses are around like novelty and shock. And I think, again, that's interesting for someone who just came out of it, that we could say, he could have said chaos is a lot of things. He could have gone down the femininity angle. He could have said it's a dragon to slay, but he really does, you know, go with that kind of like, it's what you're ignoring. That's chaos. And I think that's probably telling of, as you guys have said, he ignored a lot, and this all built up for a long time for him, you know, between when this first book was published and since the second.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Next up is going to be, let's see, is going to be Ron, Luke, and Becky. Ron.
All right. Thanks, Shrikant. And this kind of resonates with what Claire was just saying, but I was struck by how he, in the overture, kind of framed and set up the rest of the book in the way that he talked about how chaos can present itself in different ways and in different levels. You know, he used, or how it reveals itself, I think is the word he used. And he said it could reveal itself gently and make us curious, or if we don't voluntarily see the chaos, and I think that was a really key word he used, voluntarily, then there can be disruption, and he used words like suddenly and terribly and accidentally. So I think that kind of sets up nicely the rest of the book, because it puts that idea of how do we sense into our relationship with chaos, and how do we know and maybe be attuned to when it's time to voluntarily make changes and lean into chaos and away from order, rather than always having to wait for something to have to kind of get our attention, which it seems to do a lot personally and societally. And then just one final quick thing, and it almost got lost the first time, or the first couple times I read it, but just that phrase of that the motivation for all of this is the instinct of meaning, that it's our instinct for meaning that would even want to have us voluntarily lean into novelty and chaos in the first place. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ron. Next up is Luke. Luke, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Luke. So one point that I think I responded to the most was how he talked about his book, how he talked about writing this. You know, he kind of talks about it in a way like he cherishes working and writing and doing something, but at the same time, he talked about it in a way as if he was going to, he literally said, to hell with it at one point. He said here, you know, I can tell you what saved me, the love of my family, and the fact that I had meaningful work, but I had to force myself to concentrate and to breathe and to keep from saying and meaning to hell with it during the endless months that I was possessed by dread and terror. So I responded to that in a way because I'm an artist myself, and I understand the strenuous labor of creating any body of work or any piece of art. So I think for me, I mean, it's unfortunate he goes through those circumstances, but I was inspired, or I felt related to his struggle in some kind of way, that he had to force himself to sit down, concentrate, breathe, which is something I've experienced as well, just to create something so meaningful. And I think he did it, you know, because he has this innate duty, I guess. Like he feels that he owes his community, his followers, his fans, I don't know, some kind of like follow up to the other rules that he's created, which I don't know if that's necessary. I mean, if the book was the thing that saved him, then all power to him. But I don't think he didn't have to put out another book, really. But if it's what saved them, sure, great. But I think whole point is I was inspired by his commitment to finishing this book. That's all I have to say.
Excellent. Yeah, I do think that work can really save the artist. Because
Yeah,
when you produce something that actually you're actually putting something that is in you out there, which inspires you, which actually creates this kind of virtuous loop. Thank you. Next up is Becky, Pegor, and Kevin. Becky.
So I wanted to talk about being at the border of chaos versus free fall into chaos. When you're at the border, you can confront it, and it's very often the case that you exercise courage. But when you're in free fall into chaos, everything changes. And for Peterson, that's what he was experiencing when his wife and his daughter were extremely ill. His source of security and understanding of relationships, that was crumbling. And then what he also thought was benign by taking the benzos was anything but. And for him to be to succumb to all that, he really did have a free fall into chaos. And for one of his criticisms of Freud and Jung was that they put too much emphasis on the individual. For him, he fell into chaos. He himself was not capable of pulling himself out, and it was his family, his position in society that helped pull him out. And so he does recognize that, and he puts emphasis not just on the individual but also on society. It's sometimes with PTSD or not being able to have control over your physical responses is very hard, but you have other people and to really help.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Next up is going to be Pegor, Kevin, and Roger. Pegor.
Yeah, so I wanted to, like, the thing that struck me was when he was talking about his struggle with his family and his own health. And then I remembered that in a couple of talks on YouTube, he mentions that he feels like he's riding a 50-foot wave and it's gonna come down crashing. And so I wanna, like, I hope that he explains in the book if he saw this coming. I mean, I guess he saw it in some prophetic sense, but like, he saw the flood coming and how he prepared for it or otherwise, I guess.
Thank you, Pegor. Next up is Kevin, Roger, and Mike. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. We mentioned before about the self.
Kevin, could you speak into the mic?
Okay. We previously talked about the self transcendency. I would say that's a perfect example for us. How one person expand his life and boundaries, not just for himself and family, and bigger than that, everybody get empowered. And I won't talk about more about order chaos. I feel order is born from chaos. It's within the chaos. They both exist in everything and in every situation. Yeah. And it's like English word is interest. We got plural, and that's it's a multiple options. It's like when we live, it's a choice to ask ourselves open questions rather than close questions, yes or no. So that's I'm going to keep short. I wish the best for the Peterson family house. Yes, that's very touchy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Roger and Mike. Roger.
Yeah, for this overture, I really liked it. I think it's a great telling of basically the hell he had to go through, and a good display of his own theories put to work. Like he said before in several interviews, that this was really a genuine challenge of faith. And I think it put a lot of his ideas that he had in Maps of Meaning truly to the test. The temptation to not be resentful, the problem of falling, a descent into chaos. And something somebody said on the first person that was answering the question really made me think of this, because they noticed they were talking about narratives. And I was just thinking how different it would have been had he passed away versus his recovery, right? And the idea of his recovery being the very, kind of like a validation of his perspective to some extent of how you deal with situations when they're completely chaotic and unpredictable. But that was it.
Wonderful. All right, folks. So now is the main part of the meetup, which is going to be the breakout rooms. So the way we are going to do it is that we are trying out something new. We are trying out moderated breakout rooms. So everybody who has a star right next to their, just before their name, are the moderators. And we're going to be discussing 3 questions. So the 3 questions that we're going to be discussing are, number 1, what brought you here? What are you expecting to get from this book, from these discussions? So that's first question. Second is on chaos. What is chaos? How do you understand it? Discussion of chaos. And the third one is, what do you think about Jordan Peterson's experience, and any conclusions, that you can think based on that. Now, each of the people who is moderating is quite an amazing person. They know Jordan Peterson very well, and they're going to lead the discussion. It's going to be little meetup within meetup. It's going to be for 30 minutes. And after that, we're going to come back together here automatically. And we're going to be talking about our takeaways and looking forward. All right. And after everybody gets to talk about their takeaways, we will identify a few themes, and we'll be doing this lightning round of comments on that, very short comments. All right. So I'm starting the breakout rooms now. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. So it's time for takeaways now. I just want to let you know that there is a person here who has already finished the book. So I don't know why you guys are reading so slowly, but there are people who have already finished the book. So I was very astonished. He did it on audio at three times the speed. So, all right. So folks, now it's time for takeaways. You can go ahead and type !! to talk about your takeaways. You can talk about anything that you got from both the overture as well as your discussions in the breakout rooms. So there are very good questions. We'll go to these questions. We'll maybe talk about how do you kind of scan books, how do you go through books quickly, and there are books that are not worth reading. Most books are not worth reading. There are few books worth only skimming and tasting a little bit. There are a bunch of books which you can just go through very quickly. Then there are books where you actually, a friend of mine calls it destroying the book. That means you go underline the book, write on it, and you get it to destroy means basically you get everything that you possibly can from the book. It's already there in your head, in your life, and you can throw the book away and still is with you. That's destroying the book. So there are books like that. You need to read it at least 12 times to get that. So there is all kinds of strategies that you have for all of these things. So we can talk about that. But let's go ahead and start with the takeaways. Mike and Joe. Mike, I'll give you 1 minute or 2 minutes.
I'll only take 30 seconds.
Oh, wonderful. Go ahead.
The book is kind of about the Serenity Prayer, and the problem that I have about joys and problems with the book. He's taken the Serenity Prayer and read only the first part of it, how to basically feel good about the things that he can't handle, and what he or the audience can do to keep from going crazy in the night. And I would like, I wish he had spent more time on how to manage, for example, his medical condition,
Got it.
his, you want the rest of that? Or
Please. Yeah.
okay.
We have figured out a way of talking, Mike. I have to interrupt you every 30 seconds. Then you remain on track, which is great.
I haven't used 30 seconds unless we count this little.
I'm sorry, I don't have my
backboard.
stopwatch going, but go ahead, Mike.
All right. He needs to manage his career. He needs to manage his finances. He needs to manage his family. And he's accepted, he's telling us how to manage failure or to not go crazy doing things that are impossible.
Mike, have you read the book? Or
I read the chapter and then I finished the whole book, like you said to do, but probably using Alice in Wonderland sampling technique.
Okay.
But I think I understand what he's all about.
Okay, wonderful.
So-
Look forward to having your second take next week. Next up, folks, for those who don't know, Mike is our resident historian and gadfly, and so if I don't interrupt him, he can go on for 20 minutes without stop in all possible directions. So this works out very beautifully. Next up is Joe, Becky, and Jean. Joe.
Yeah, so we had an interesting discussion in our breakout room, and I think one thing that was pretty revealing was that it's going to be interesting to see how people separate Jordan Peterson's current experiences from the book itself, and whether this is a validation of his experience, of his approaches and his rules and applying them to life, or is it going to be somewhere where people are looking at it and saying, well, you failed in this area, then it shows that you don't necessarily know what you're talking about. I think it's the former. I always like to look at people that go through tough times, emerge from them, and then talk about them. And, if you can have countless examples of somebody like that, Viktor Frankl's the obvious standard. But, that I tend to think people that have overcome really have deep insights into what it means to really engage with chaos. I don't think, I think it's, people have to separate a lot of the emotions that they have attached with Jordan Peterson, and that's going to be a challenge sometimes. Both positive and negative. And that kind of came out in our room as well. And I think it's actually going to be a very interesting exploration going forward. But that was one thing, even when we were talking about chaos and everything, how much was he even responsible for of his own chaos? That was where the conversation went. And I think that's going to be a running theme throughout the book for some people. So it'll be interesting to parse that out and to kind of be fair in our assessment and be objective in assessing the psychology and everything else that he's written with, his experience. And then even determining whether his experience adds to the, to the validity or it takes away from it. So.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. I certainly think, I certainly agree with you that, like, if a person has gone through it and it's come to tell about it, I think that's added bonus points. And in some ways, I don't even really look at. I personally don't look at kind of the history of the author. I look at the ideas being presented and saying, these are philosophical ideas. Do they make sense or they don't make sense? And next up is Becky, Jean, Kevin, and Maritza. Becky.
When we think of the yin and yang, we we have the black piece and the white piece, but within the black piece, there's still a white piece, and within the white piece, there's still a dot of the black piece. And so I often think of order decaying to chaos. Like the default is entropy. You leave everything alone and it goes to chaos. Or you can actively destroy everything. But it's harder to understand the reverse of going from chaos to order, as we can inject order, but that requires energy. And most of us would not choose to use energy to do such things. So it's harder to see that reverse. But then if you think of it on a meta level, for example, randomness in nature, there you can see that there's some order to that randomness. Let's say perhaps the randomness around a mean of a distribution, it might follow the normal distribution. There you have some sort of order to your chaos. So that was kind of interesting to me.
Very nice. Thank you, Becky. Next up is Jean. Jean, what do you think?
Yeah, so I haven't read the book. I'm very busy last couple of weeks.
No. I'm not, Jean, I'm not expecting everybody to have finished the book. It just came out to only one person managed to do that. So I was just marveling at that. We're just talking about the first overture. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I found it's quite interesting. We actually have heated debate in our room. What I want to share, I found interesting is like nature always has some type of order, but human is chaos. Like why? That's why, it's kind of interesting. We look at nature, people study nature, the scientists all become religious. They believe there's a God creating all this order. You look at the trees, everything seems to go harmonies together. But when you look at the human psychology, then Nietzsche become crazy. All these people study human is chaos, but nature is order. That's one of my observation. And I found that the thing is with Jordan Peterson, I think people tend to, I think human are not that big difference. Like people tend to put the famous people in the pedestal and think they're the perfect, they figure out everything. If they do anything wrong, they didn't figure out. And we shouldn't expect that, because they are just better communicator. They may be summarized better because they have similar experience as us. That's how we get inspiration from them. If they're perfect, we can't learn anything from them at all. I think that's why in the room I said, Jordan Peterson didn't see all the problem. Is he avoiding all this? That's why it happened, the chaos, and he didn't deal with it properly. And that's because he didn't take care of all this, avoiding the emotional, facing emotional problem. I said that's maybe the reason he have such a big impact, because thinking about everybody, a person take care of his family so well, he will have no time to think about big pictures. That's why Van Gogh, he died, but he created this masterpiece. Only the people, that's why Zaha Hadid, only famous woman architect. I was looking at him, and she never married, she never had kids. Like she married to his architecture, and his kids is architecture. That's the only way you can create this powerful work. I think we shouldn't, look at the people at macroscope of their problem. We should look at their accomplishment, how they inspire us with their mistake, how they learn from their mistake, find order from chaos. Yeah.
Wonderful. I just want to make a small comment. Nature is quite chaotic. If you look at evolution, there is just so many things that die out, that what you see is only the ones that survive. So it's like when you look at people look at a very peaceful scene by the lake, there is actually war going on between little plants, the other plants, and the trees and insects, all kinds of stuff going on. It looks very pretty, but there is a lot of stuff going on, Jean, back there. Next up is Kevin, Maritza, and Jade. Kevin.
Thank you. I think we need awareness about the power of unknown and chaos, like you guys say. It could be as art. We don't understand, don't see it. What we see is not what we get. The truth is hard to find. We have to peel the onion to find it. Peterson and his book, bringing from theoretically thinking to a practical action. I'm looking for the first chapter for Don't Carelessly, Denigrate, Social Institutions, and Creative Achievement next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Maritza.
Sorry, Jean had me stray a little bit. She's got me thinking of mushrooms. So I'm gonna go on a tangent for a second here.
Go ahead.
The honey mushroom is it's one of the largest mushrooms that lives. I don't know if in the world, but definitely in this country, and it's in Oregon, and it's actually Amaria ostoye is the name of it, the official name. It's on the surface, it looks just like a normal little cluster of a mushroom, but all mushrooms are always bigger underneath, right? This one is the biggest bully that exists in nature. It spans like so many meters of a forest, and ultimately it kills everything in its wake. It's the honey mushroom. It's edible. It has this slight sweet flavor. It looks totally, tame there and quiet, but it's actually slowly killing entire forest. That's chaos in nature, but it's also very methodical in how it does it. So that's got a little bit of both, right? The chaos and the order. So we just went on that little bit tangent there, had me thinking. But I kind of see it here. My takeaway is the maybe it's a little bit of that. I do see a little bit of the need for balance here. And in the chat, my chat group, we talked about we ourselves being the chaos. Like we are the creators of chaos for ourselves and or for others. And I really like the concept. And also, someone brought up a Jungian concept of a mystical marriage. And I really felt that the common thread here that we were discussing was this acknowledgement that it's like, what Becky was saying, there's the black, the white, or the yin yang, but it's also, again, the white and then the black. It's kind of all interwoven into each other. And I think in this overture here, Peterson is kind of laying out to us that no matter how much we think we have this grasp on what we perceive to be order, or we think we've wrangled the unknown, there's gonna be a high probability that we may have made an error. And in that error, well, now we spawned a whole bunch of new little chaos babies, and there's gonna be consequences. And I think he's setting up to tell us, but it's okay. I got 12 little gems here of wisdom that just might help you be able to figure this out. And I'm excited to see what these little gems are. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maritza. Next up is Jade. Jade.
The group I was in was pretty awesome. They inspired a lot of thought. One of the things that I was realizing is that we're all sitting here trying to understand chaos, which is kind of funny because chaos is disorder, and we're trying to make chaos into an orderly concept. It's what people do. So it's I don't know. It's just very interesting how the human mind even tries to make sense of things that literally don't make sense. But I think on some level, we can't really understand chaos because it comes in a different form every single time. So I guess we can understand the principle of chaos. But I think the only way that we make sense of chaos is by creating order. So then we never really understood the chaos, did we? I don't know. That's just out there for people to pick apart if they feel like it. Because I know that's probably a big straw man type of thing. And I'm probably using the wrong illustration for that too. But one thing that did come up in the group was a concept of how chaos brings in the concept, or certain types of things that come out of nowhere kind of bring a person in touch with the concept that they're not immortal anymore. And when they said that, Laura said that. I don't know if I don't know how to give people credit, if they wanted credit or not, because we're in a break room, but I think I could give her credit for that. Because sometimes people don't want to have that out there, but that was a very good observation. And I think one of the things that's about chaos that's jarring is that people end up feeling vulnerable. And on some level, it's the desire to not feel vulnerable, is to get back to a feeling of safety, because he wasn't safe, his family wasn't safe, all these people aren't safe. And I'm also curious, this is just me as like looking at Jordan Peterson and his demographic. Like, he even identifies his demographic as single men who play video games a lot of the time when he makes his speeches and stuff. So I'm wondering, is this book gonna ostracize people? Because it's beginning with the concept that family is the source of meaning. And he was giving these people who didn't have people meaning. So I'm interested in finding out what the rest of the book is like, and how is he gonna tie it in so that those people don't feel ostracized and like, oh my gosh, my life has no meaning because I don't have those direct people. Yeah, there's other stuff, but that's a weird place to leave, but I'll leave it there. It's just, yeah.
Thank you. It's very interesting. You know, you have the white book and the black book. You got the kind of the order and chaos. So it's like, I thought it was brilliant kind of marketing part. You know, his order and chaos has been his main theme throughout. Like, you know, if you want to really look at his thought, you look at Maps of Meaning. That's his core thought. So his one book, which is kind of largely focused on how do you keep order in the midst, you know, in chaos, and you know, how do you achieve order when chaos is around? And second, this one, looking at this, looking at, you know, how do you make the most of chaos? And I personally love this book much more, though I have not read it yet. But the topic is far more exciting. It's exactly the thing that I need to focus on more. So I'm really looking forward to that. Next up is Dave, Marvin, and Jennifer. Dave.
Thanks, Shrikant. I finally realized, I think the way I want to express this is that Peterson is a great communicator. He's obviously a charismatic speaker, which really drew me to him the first time I saw one of his YouTube clips. But also, I realized in his writing, he communicates things so well to explain things to us, sometimes through his personal experience, other times, you know, stories with his clients. But I'm very much looking forward to this book. Yeah, to me, I'm learning so much, and he looks at everything from different angles. And in our room, we were talking about he's not afraid to get into these Russian authors, and Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Solzhenitsyn, and into deep subject like the Columbine boys and all that stuff. So anyway, here's looking to you. We'll see you next week.
Dave, you were not familiar with Jordan Peterson before you discovered our group, right?
Right.
Okay, and so but you've been reading, you've been coming to all these lectures. What have you gotten from Jordan Peterson?
Well, his most impressive chapter to me in the previous book was How to Raise Kids, which is very appropriate to me since I don't have any kids. But no, he just has a very useful information about life and philosophy.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Dave. Next up is Marvin and Jennifer. Folks, you can line up for sharing your takeaways by typing exclamation marks. Marvin.
Yes. I think my remark going to be infamous down in history.
Just keep it short. I'll give you 3 minutes. How about that?
Yes. Here's Jordan Peterson, rule number 13, rule of life. Do what I tell you to do. Don't do what I do. Do what I tell you to do. That's one thing. Somebody else said, you have to take care of yourself. Then you take care of your family. Then you take care of society, in that order. Somebody said that. Then the other thing is, my point about chaos is, if you look, there's historical chaos like the financial crash or the Second World War, but in Jordan Peterson's case, is his personal chaos, and that is more closer to him. Doesn't affect anybody else. It's not like Viktor Frankl, right? So, but what did he do when he saw the 50-foot waves coming? He took what kind of drug, whatever is it? Yeah. So that is, I find that is the cause of chaos, is because you see the sign and you repress, you try to ignore it. And then the roof caved in and it's like, all hell break loose. That's his chaos. But if mindfulness, yeah, we talk about mindfulness. Where was mindfulness here, right? So in this case, if he listened to his feelings, because feeling is biology telling you that the way you're living your life doesn't agree with me. I'm suffering right here, right? Do something. What he does, he go and write more books and talk about whatever Campbell or whatever, like big stuff. So he goes in his cave, intellectual cave, and try to repress whatever, ignore. Yeah, so then the roof caved in, and that's his chaos. And so order and chaos is just a continuation. Order become chaos because, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Marvin. Appreciate that. Folks, you can always be free to talk about whatever you think. You can always speak your mind. You can disagree with anybody. Just try to be short, so that way it doesn't overwhelm in time what is being said. So thank you, Marvin. Next up is, let's see, Jennifer is not here. So next up is Judith. Judith.
Okay, I have 3 quick points. I think we are always living on the brink of chaos, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Not one of us here knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Anything could happen. And we all have people in our lives, that we've, that woke up one morning and didn't realize that that day their world would be very different. So I think just knowing that puts us always in some kind of state of on the edge of chaos, which is itself like a chaotic feeling in the mind, So that's one thing. Also, I think there are different types of chaos. So when we were talking, Jade was talking about family too, family is good for some types of chaos. Well, family, it's always good to have, your family and people who love you. I'm not saying that. But certain types of chaos, like Jordan Peterson experienced, where he needed support because he couldn't make decisions for himself. Yeah, you need loved ones. But there are other types of chaos where you have to really address it yourself. And sometimes even those people closest to you, your loved ones, might not be helpful in the process. Not that, and by that I don't mean that they're causing trouble. I just mean that it's something that you really need to do yourself. And that if you lean on people, then that's not going to help you get out of your chaos, you know, if you do it in the wrong way. I don't know. So I just feel like there's many different types of chaos. So there's different ways to address it. So I'm really curious to see what these 12 rules are, because maybe there's some kind of theme that fits all types of chaos. That would be cool. Let me see. I thought I had one more thing, but I can't think of it. So you're good.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Next up is Brian. Brian, go ahead.
So I'm, first of all, I'm very excited about this book, especially after what Shrikant said. I didn't really realize that was the pitch, and now I see it is. That's the new slant on this. I was excited because there was a question I really hadn't understood. Either it hadn't been answered or I hadn't understood the answer out of the last book. And that was this, what I saw as a contradiction or a contrast between the story of the cocktail party, where this the woman says, wow, I'm having a hard time in life. I hope it's not life, I hope it's me, because it's easier to fix me. So that's the one attitude. And the other attitude is Solzhenitsyn, where, hey, I'm not going to let anything slide. Those little things that are happening out there in the world, if my conscience tells me to stand up, or that little voice tells me to stand up, I'm going to stand up. So it's not me, it's the world. And I'm looking for how that, I'm hoping that that will be addressed in this book.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Let's see. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else wants to? Okay. Next up is Andrew. Andrew, go ahead.
Sure. I want to expand on actually what Marvin brought up, and I think he's got a good point that we never really touch on. Jordan Peterson's philosophy, if you will, is very appealing to me. You know, a lot of it just makes sense. It feels right. One thing though, and studying it and really thinking about it, to me, it really, he's taking a very scientific perspective. A lot of the stuff that he says, I think, can be perceived as having some kind of mystical, spiritual component. I would propose that really where he's coming from, he's, you know, a true Darwinianist. I mean, hardcore. It's all about evolution, all the Jungian stuff, the mysticism, that again, those are all manifestations of evolution. And so it's a very scientific approach. And again, it's very appealing to me. It's a scientific approach combined with also a reverence, right, for the unknowable. So he's kind of got this big respect element, which again, it just all makes sense to me. But what he's doing is he's focusing so much on the science that he focuses on thinking for the solution. And kind of like what Marvin was alluding to, you know, thinking it through is, you know, you can't get, that's not the way to salvation necessarily. You have to recognize that thinking can be tortuous too. And maybe that's something that makes life a little difficult for him.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Next up is Jennifer. Jennifer, you're back.
Thank you. Yeah, I got booted off. I'm not sure if, you know, what I missed, but I wanted to, and a lot of people have kind of mentioned some of the things that I'm going to say here, but it's just from Peterson, Math, Science Concepts, that chaos is unpredictability with a determined sense, a sense of a determined outcome. Of course, differentiated per individual, society, and globally. It is a perceived randomness. And I appreciate his acknowledgement and assigned importance to a vast unknown. There are limitations to human perception. We do not know it all. Things appear chaotic, but maybe there is an order to it. Hence, subjectivity. It appears we predict and carefully plan, but this perceived chaos, positive, negative, neutral, ensues. Chaos is without form. And I think Jade had mentioned that chaos is without form, and it's navigating until known. That is discovery. What I gathered again from him is that there is a susceptibility that you invite when you favor order. It just reinforces the necessity for us to have balance. And I know a lot of people have mentioned that earlier. He stated that neither state of order nor state of chaos is preferable. So we need balance of the two. Our body is homeostatic. We need balance. Too much of something thwarts our growth. Evolution per adaptability is needed. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so now let's do a quick lightning round. All right, so I have two questions for the lightning round. The first one is, what is your personal relationship with chaos? Okay, and the second question I have is, why are you excited about reading this book? What excites you about reading this book? So I'm going to start with chaos. So what is your personal relationship with chaos? Now, this is lightning round. So just go ahead and type an exclamation mark, and you have to say whatever you want to say in about 2 to 3 sentences, just under 30 seconds. All right. So let's start with Pegor. Pegor, what's your personal relationship with chaos?
I'm sort of fed up with chaos because I grew up in Lebanon, which is a pretty chaotic country, and my family was sort of chaotic. So I've had enough chaos. I want order, a bit of order, at least for a couple of years to process everything, and then maybe jump back out there.
All right, now for something completely different. Jean, what's your personal relationship with chaos?
I think personally, I love chaos. So that's why I make my trip to Hawaii, and it's really rewarding. After all the chaos, do the test, flight canceled with snow, have to rebook everything, rebook the hotel, cancel everything, redo everything, finally make to Hawaii. It's really worth it. I was snorkeling with the fish. I also feel at home. You know, I need a new experience. Chaos bring new experience to me. I can't stay home too long. It drives me crazy. So chaos is great.
Wonderful. Anybody else wants to answer this question? Okay, Kevin, what's your relationship with chaos?
Yeah, I put a 3 short sentence. Enjoy what I have, hope the best, prepare the worst.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. Jyoti, what's your relationship with chaos?
Chaos is very exhausting. I don't want it anymore in my life, but I know I'm going to have it.
Judith, what about you?
Yeah, chaos isn't great, but I mean, that's where I've learned many things, in chaos, not in non-chaos. So not really welcoming it, but I'm trying to see where it lies and maybe tackle it, before it gets too big.
Wonderful. Just like the dragon story of Jordan Peterson. Next up, Joe, what's your relationship with chaos?
I feel like my whole life is chaos. I mean, that's the reality. I'm looking for order. The order is the smaller part, so I'm just trying to get more chaos. So I feel like my relationship with chaos is that maybe I embrace it a little too much. So that's how I would explain it.
Excellent. Thank you. Next up is Brian. What's your relationship with chaos?
I've been fortunate to have a good foot in order most of my life, so I enjoy the chaos usually. And my favorite relationship is picking and choosing my chaos by picking and choosing my goals.
Wonderful. Choosing, encountering the chaos deliberately instead of letting it find you. Next up is Becky. What's your relationship with chaos?
I find that choosing willful blindness for a very long time is a really good recipe for utter chaos. And but to really come back from that, takes a lot, not just from yourself, but from other people.
Wonderful. Marvin, what's your personal relationship with chaos?
I'm unsure, but how I deal with it is to live a simple life, to simplify.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Jade. What about you?
I would say that I am fine with external chaos as long as I have internal internal order. Let me say that again. I'm confusing myself. I'm fine with external chaos as long as I have internal order. I think I'm realizing I might be a bit of a problem solver, and I think you can't, like puzzles, even when I was, they do all that school testing, like puzzles was my thing. Like you give me any puzzle. But I think the thing is like, if things are out of order, you can't solve, like that's a puzzle, like things are out of order. You can't, yeah. So, but I don't know if things being out of order or disorganized is the same thing as chaos, but for the sake of this, I'll say yeah. So that's where I stand on that. I just got to be internally organized.
That's very stoic of you, because stoicism is all about that, of just maintaining that. Beautiful. Thank you. Next up is Ron. Ron, what about you?
Yeah, well, one unfortunate pattern that I've noticed about this is that it goes something like, I avoid risk by seeking a kind of stability, but it turns out that stability itself is a kind of chaos. That all makes sense.
Thank you. Luke, go ahead.
I already wrote mine out. I didn't have anything to say.
Okay. My life is pretty repetitive. Want to hop into a rocket and see some aliens, or just move out of my hometown. Okay, wonderful. Next up is Anne.
I live in Washington, D.C. End of story.
I live in New York. I
think we've got you beat these days.
Yes, temporarily. Only temporarily.
We do, Shrikant. Like, for the past couple of years, have been pretty insane in DC.
That is true. I grant you that. Okay, excellent. All right. So if there is somebody else, let's go to the next one. Last question. Why are you excited about reading this book? What's in it for you? Anybody?
I'll do this one. I feel like I'm actually more freaked out about this book after today, to be honest, because I think there's something sort of uncomfortable about chaos and all of the things that are hidden. Like I don't want to go there. So I think I don't know. I'm now very treading sort of lightly. I think what first attracted me and why I've been so excited for it is, I wonder what new ideas are in here, right? That would be the best case scenario, is that things are so condensed in a new way, or that there is, something else we can glean, because I think we've learned a lot together here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Claire. Next up is Marvin. Marvin, are you planning to read the book?
I might. Well, one good thing I hear so far about this book is that Jordan finally discovered love, something that he should have written a long time ago. And so finally it took him the world shaking down to discover love. And then I hope his next book would be even better than this one.
Thank you. Next up is Maritza. Maritza, what are you looking forward to?
I agree with Marvin. I think that this book is going to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more emotional. I'm looking forward to that. He says in this overture, he says, whatever is not touched by the new stagnates. And I think, or I'm hoping, that what follows after that is going to be, he's going to pull in the concepts of community, love, culture, and tie those in. And one little thing to Marvin, in the maps of meaning, it's very, very more, it's indirect, but he really does plead to us to find culture. And, you know, in my mind, finding culture is it's a byproduct. You get love from that. That's just my 2 cents there.
Wonderful. Joe, what are you looking forward to?
I'm like Clara in the sense that I'm really excited after today in particular in my breakout room and what some of the discussions that we had, some of the criticisms that people had has made me more excited actually about reading it. And specifically, I think that I'm really excited that he's gotten through this very difficult period and to really see how that comes out in this work and what he used to get through that difficult period. But the other thing is that I'm always the most interested in whenever I'm, reading a book is what other ideas does it give me about, and what other what additional understanding will it give me regarding chaos? Not just what's in the book, but in general, like how does this relate to chaos in other areas, whether it be in science, math, and so I do think that there'll be some ideas that I can generate out of this book as well. So that's what really has me excited.
Wonderful. Roger, you did this deep dive into maps of meaning. You pretty much immerse yourself in it for so long. What do you think this book has to offer you?
Well, yeah, I think I talked about it even in my group, but the idea that the maps of meaning theory literally got put to the test here, like everything that was supposed to, that antidote to chaos, like he got firsthand knowledge to see if that actually worked, right? And so I'm really interested in how that comes through. The fact that this was written in not in a situation like in the first 12 Rules for Life where like he's climbing up in his career, but rather in this one when he's both at the peak of his career and his popularity and also his entire personal life is collapsing. And I think it's a very different dynamic just within the theory that he's functioning in to see if that theory can actually, withstand that stress test. And I was also just going to parrot what Maritza already stated about, order and the idea of order, that order is your culture, society, your family, everything external outside of you. And it's the idea of you having to, you can't be yourself even with your family, right? You have to act nice, you have to be kind, but in doing that, there's that love that develops naturally that I think Peterson has always pushed. That's like, it's kind of a requirement. You can't live on your own. If humans were without culture, we would just die. We need each other, for better or for worse. But I'm really interested to see how he takes all this stuff and connects it, because even just some of the excerpts that I've seen him read are much darker, which I'm a huge fan of because I like the non-blinking eye towards the scary stuff. But yeah, I also feel the same as Claire, that I'm like, ooh, there's going to be more intense stuff that's going to keep me up at night. So it'll be fun.
I was particularly impressed just with the language and the tightness and the power of writing in the excerpts that he has read out. So I'm really looking forward to this. Next up is Deepak. Deepak, what about you? What are you looking for? Wait a minute, Deepak. So can you tell people what happens when you hear this whole book at 3 times the speed?
It'll be like watching a movie in your head, but on a fast-paced basis. So you get what's happening, but you don't really, think about it on a minute-to-minute basis, right? So it's like a train of thought, and there's like a train, like you're basically a deer in the headlights in the track, and you're getting run over. But you eventually get used to getting run over and getting reincarnated. So yeah.
Wow.
You just live forever. You feel immortal.
Wow. So now that you've read it or heard it once very quickly, what are you looking forward to in your subsequent runs through the book?
So I want to, my plan is like list the rules one by one and like break it apart, make some graphs, and see how I can apply it to the field I research in, and apply some, see how it can like work in helping me frame the strategies, because most people know that a lot of the science is not set in stone. It's not deterministic. It's probabilistic. The more you're on the boundary of modern discovery, the more it becomes of an art rather than a science. So it just becomes more of a agreement with other people on the other people on the edge of knowledge as well. So you're on the frontier of the unknown, right? So that's where the chaos comes in, right? So you try to match the order of things you know to the disorder of the unknown you expect from the future.
Got it.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you, Deepak. In talking about doing graphs for the chapters, Victor, do you feel up to doing mythology slides for each of the chapters?
Absolutely. I'm up for the challenge.
All right. So you got 5 minutes for each of the lectures. 5 minutes is enough, or you need more time? 5 minutes is enough? All right. All right. So because it was just spectacular what you did for Maps of Meaning, and it would be wonderful to see you do that for okay, wonderful, great. Next up is Pegor. Pegor, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so I want to echo what Roger said, and I want to like once the book is done, we're done with the book, I would like to do like a compare and contrast between the first book and the second book, because when he wrote the first book, he was defending order. In some sense, his defense of order was self-serving, and now like chaos is actually hurting him. And will he do as good of a job defending chaos as he did defending order? Maybe even a better job, you know, hopefully.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
Wonderful. We will definitely do that. We'll definitely do that. We've got Roger was planning to do or is planning to do meetup on mapping 12 rules using Maps of Meaning. And maybe he can do 12 rules, the original 12 rules and these 12 rules separately, and then maybe map them all together. But first, let's look at them one by one, and then we will do all of these things. So great. Next up is going to be Karina. Karina, go ahead.
Okay, so Chaos and I are old friends, and and I enjoy Jordan Peterson's different perspectives, and I enjoy kind of the way I engage with his writing, which is sort of I don't agree with everything he says, but it sort of lights me up to like have that conflict or something. And I think someone mentioned he does seem to be going about facing this idea of chaos and defending it in an extremely ordered, very cognitively inclined way, which is something that will help me, but is also, you know, maybe something that you know, that contributes to his own pain. But I think, like, I don't know, I think maybe the chaos is his willingness to bring us through his suffering and his experiences, and like put his trust in his audience at the height of his career, not knowing if they'll, you know, stay with him through it or not. And I think that's kind of beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Karina. So folks, I think this is a good beginning. So I'm going to call on the facilitator if you want to just make like one sentence, 2 sentence thing about how the format is working, how the breakout rooms, especially the breakout rooms, because what I've done is that I've increased the time. Did they work out all right? So you can just go ahead and unmute and let me know. The facilitators.
I thought it went very well.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, we managed to stay on topic, and having questions really helped.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think it went well.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. So we are all set. I think we've got a fantastic, fantastic start. And the next rule that you're going to do 1 week from now is do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievements. And I'm very much excited. I've heard the short summary that Jordan Peterson did. It's fantastic. So looking forward to it. We'll use the same format. See you folks 1 week from today.